All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. This is our first ever weekly coaching call, so I'm incredibly excited about it. My name is Jen Trum, and I have been in human resources for over 20 years, about 22 years, and I am also a certified life coach. So during the period of COVID, when everyone was in lockdown, I found an opportunity to no longer have my 45 minutes one-way commute that I had had before, to then be able to do a certification to be a life coach, something that I really felt like, as in my time in HR, one of the things I loved the most about HR is the ability to help people, the ability to really see people as they grow and as they thrive and start to really kind of see that spark. And so coaching was really a natural thing for me personally. And so now being able to have that joint, still being in HR, and now also being able to help others as a coach, has been really incredible for me. Would you mind muting anyone who has joined us? I'm really happy to have you here. But yeah, so life coaching is, for me, is something that is an incredible way to be able to help others kind of see inside our own minds. That's the way I see life coaching. I see it as something that a lot of times we have a lot of drama that we deal with in our day-to-day lives, and we're not always paying attention to some of the inner drama that's going on in our mind, some of the negative self-talk and ways that we can be really, really difficult and hard on ourselves. And I think that coaching is really the way, a tool to be able to understand what is underlying sometimes the burnout that we have. I know for myself, being in HR for so many years, I repeatedly found myself, regardless of the company I work for, the manager I had, I was repeatedly struggling with burnout because I did not know how to regulate myself when it came to wanting to please others, when it came to wanting to succeed, when it came to wanting to work up this ladder. I was completely imbalanced in my mind around what that actually meant and what it was going to take. And so I think so many of us have that, those of us who struggle with imposter syndrome, who don't feel good enough, who always feel like they are not yet where they really want to be and feel judged for it. Or those of us who really struggle with, not feeling as though we're a part of, a team or an environment, even though we have all the opportunities to be able to do so. And so all of these struggles are really why, for myself, I wanted to get into coaching, and why now I really want to be able to help others who were also in HR, who were in the field of human resources, who struggle with being able to show up for themselves, who struggle with being able to see beyond sometimes that drama that we have in our minds, to be able to get beyond that and start recognizing the inner strength and power that we have. Because it's like a bit of my soapbox here, but I am a true believer that HR professionals are the heart of the organization. And when we can take advantage of that, when we can recognize that inner strength that we have, we can really start to stand up and speak up and recognize that inner strength. And sometimes that means moving on, right? For those of you who might be in an organization or have leadership who are really not interested in hearing the voices of the people, who are not interested in recognizing the importance of putting people first, all of those things make it so difficult for any of us to really be able to feel like we're able to make the difference that we want to make in our careers. And I know that that was me for so long, continuing to push up against this wall when ultimately it was completely out of my control. And that's another really incredible benefit that you can get from coaching, is recognize what is and what's not in our control. Because the more that you can really gain strength in that place of understanding what you can and can't control, the more it will allow you that empowerment to move on if you need to move on, or recognize that there are just some things that you have to pick your battles, so to speak. But when it comes to your own peace of mind, your own stability, and your own mental health, I think ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of the company we work for, the manager that we have, at the end of the day, we are the ones who are responsible for showing up for ourselves. We are the ones for making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And that's where I believe that coaching can really, really help each and every one of us. So I personally have my own coach that I've had for quite some time, and it's a person that I go to often to really just talk through what is going on in my own mind. What kind of drama am I creating? What kind of doubts do I have? What kind of worries do I have? How am I holding myself back in so many ways? I think that's what we do: fear of rejection and fear of failure, fear of being looked down upon. So that is an opportunity for me to really do like an inventory, so to speak. What's really going on in there? Why am I not moving forward? Why am I holding back? What kind of fear keeps me stuck? So that is really what this program is going to be all about. It's an opportunity to get together each week, and I want to really share with each of you things that I've learned, but an opportunity also for you to share with one another. As someone who wants to be able to come on and do a little coaching with me, I think what my goal is really to be able to open it up to feedback for other, from other people who are in the community as well, on how we can help one another. Because I might have a certification, some of you might have a certification, but really we're all here for each other. And that's what this group is all about. So with that, let me make sure I kind of got my little notes to get this ball rolling. With that, I want to, again, I know at the beginning of the session, a few of you said where you were from. I heard Iowa. I saw Boston. For anyone who has joined, would you mind putting in the comments where you are coming from? And then if you haven't already, I think everyone has, but if you haven't already, make sure you are muted unless you are going to be joining me for some coaching. So with that, I'd love to get started. I've got Canada, so cool. Look at this, Tennessee, Texas. Oh, that's so cool. I'm so excited to see everybody from so many different places. So if you haven't heard yet, I live in Southern Oregon, so I haven't seen any other Oregonians here yet, but that's where I come from. So cool to have you guys here. All right, so with that, I've got a few different people who volunteered. So if you had a chance to see a few days ago, I sent out an email and I said, hey, would anyone be interested in coming on live for me and talking about something that's going on in your life? Talk about something that you're struggling with, whether it's work, whether it's home, but something that has really got you stuck. And so I had several volunteers. I'm going to go down the list and see who is on the call yet already and call on those. And then anyone who's not yet on the call, hopefully we'll get them by the end of today's session, or we'll get them next time. The first one I have is Adriana. If you're here, if you want to get off mute and put up your video, I'd love to do a little coaching with you. There you are. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet everybody.
So good to meet you. And you're from Texas, right?
Yes, correct.
Nice. Where at in Texas are you from?
I'm in the Houston area, kind of like in the surrounding outskirts of Houston.
Okay. Right on. Well, welcome. So what can I coach you on today? I know you put in a little note, but I'd love for you to kind of say in your own words what brought you here today.
Okay, well, thank you, Jen. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. And I mean, I can't remember exact the wording on the question. I may have input, but it was more kind of like, I'm barely getting in the HR field. And I just completed school back in December, and kind of just getting that, maybe some tips on how to kind of climb that professional ladder. I'm currently working for a company that it's really small, no actual HR department, but I am doing some of the HR, like recruitment, onboarding, but I'm pretty much just going on my own because, there's not HR, office manager doesn't know much about the HR. So I'm just like, oh, I wish I would have worked with someone that could like be a mentor, kind of guide me. But so yeah, so I'm all about, investing in myself, growing, but that's my, kind of current situation, just wanting to grow and surround myself with other HR professionals.
Nice. Well, I love your question. And yeah, you nailed it. That was what you put in your little feedback form. So I loved it. And I thought that that would be such a great place to start with this call, because I think so many of us struggle with that, right? Like there's so many technical things we need to know, laws we need to know, policies we need to know, right? It's so much. But when you really think about it, what are the traits? What are the behavioral skills that really help someone in HR excel? And how can you really start to build on those? Because those are the skills, right? Like they always say, you want to hire for personality and you want to hire for, all of these things. But we know in HR, that's not the case. You have to hire for competence as well. And sometimes that ends up trumping everything else when it comes to how we can grow in terms of competencies and behaviors. But I'm a very, very firm believer and the importance of really working on the soft skills and really building those competencies. And so for myself, and I'd love to hear anyone else on the call today, but for me personally, I feel like the competencies that have served me best is number one is self-awareness. I think has served me more than anything else. And I'll be honest with you, it's taken a long time to build up, because I don't know that when I was started out in my career, I really had a whole lot of awareness. I think there was so much that I was focused on externally, right? Like everything going, I was comparing myself to everything. I was constantly in my head instead of just being very, kind of aware and conscious of who I am and what I bring, and be able to start to have some stability with that, because as you know, and anyone else in HR knows, you get hit with a lot of stuff if you're not able to kind of manage that emotional baggage that gets thrown at us all the time. It can easily take us over. And that's why, I said at the beginning, I struggled so much with burnout, because I didn't have a way of really managing that. But as I've become more self-aware, I can start to see my triggers as I start to, work up, whether it's frustration or overwhelm, or a big one for me is impatience. You start to kind of recognize in yourself what are the things that will potentially cause you to act or behave in ways that don't serve you. And I think that that's where self-awareness can really come into play. And I think, the other, another trait that is so important is really, communication, and making sure that, you are really becoming skilled at not just like that verbal communication out of our mouth, but that nonverbal communication and the active listening. Those are like some huge, huge ones that can't really teach you in school. You have to get out there and you have to experience it, and you have to really get a part of it and recognize, oh, okay. it really pays to like pay attention and listen and become very acutely attuned to like nonverbal cues and things like that. I mean, that becomes a little bit difficult in remote environments, but in, face to face, it's a real skill that can be developed. So anyway, I want to pause and see if, you had any thoughts about that, or if we wanted to open it up, and if anyone wanted to throw any suggestions in the chat, or wanted to come off mute for a moment and give Adriana any suggestions as well. Well, what do you think, Adriana, about what I've said so far?
It makes sense, because I guess it's kind of like you're not gonna know everything as you're beginning. So I'm probably gonna have to learn as I go. I'm gonna make mistakes and just having that awareness that those mistakes are gonna develop me. So I shouldn't be so hard on myself. And I think like I haven't followed you for too long, but I think the past few weeks that I've seen your posts, it's like, oh, that was so encouraging. And, to, I guess, give us credit to ourselves. So that's where I'm kind of like also discovering, like as an HR professional, we are going to have to juggle many things, but knowing our value and all that stuff, I just have to keep in mind that, mistakes are to happen, but it's okay. We'll learn from those mistakes. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The mistakes will happen. And I think the more that you start to recognize that the mistakes are always going to help you be the best teachers, I think that that's also something that I've really learned over time is I think sometimes in HR, we feel like we've got this weight of the world on our shoulders, as though, if we are to make a mistake, we're going to send the company into some kind of financial ruin. And, at the end of the day, there's absolutely reason for us to want to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's and doing all of that. But we also have to remember that we're just people, we're just humans who are here to do the very best that we can in an environment. And, when we are in environments where things are changing constantly and we've got, so many different variables, we have to remember with humility to know that we're just a person doing the best we can. Um, anyone, Lakeisha, would you mind putting your sound on mute?
Sorry.
Oh, you're okay.
Good evening, everyone. Let me try to find mute.
So happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. I found mute. It's happening.
Nice. Okay. Well, Adriana, any other thoughts, or didn't seem like anyone had any other thoughts in the comments other than additional highs, but anything else come up for you on that?
I would say if I could get like maybe like the top 3 characteristics that would define like an HR professional, like what would, like maybe kind of be more like empathetic or, like, I'm just trying to figure out like what would you say would be the top 3 characteristics of a strong HR leader?
Yeah, I love that, Sarah. I love that so much. Yes, emotional intelligence is absolutely up there. And it's, similar to that awareness piece is kind of really being able to become in tune with yourself. So you will be self-managed and self-regulated. So, you are not able and don't end up kind of creating this dissonance between yourself and outside of yourself. But I would say again, building up your kind of that tolerance of being able to kind of manage the barrage of everything that gets thrown at you is incredibly important. The communication is incredibly important. Yeah, clear. Thank you, Deborah. Clear communication, both the verbal and the nonverbal communication. I think for me too, what has really helped so much in HR is, and I don't know, like, it's hard to know exactly if there's a word for it, but it really comes down to not taking things personally, is building up for yourself this armor, if you will, that allows you to recognize again that you're here, you're going to do a job, you're going to do the best you can, but you are not necessarily, it's not going to be on the weight of the world on your shoulders kind of thing, Yeah, systems, organization, or being organizational, organization, that's not the right way, being, kind of, having a good organizational skills can definitely be incredibly helpful as well. Nice, Sarah. Yeah, patience. Oh, that's a great one as well. Such a good one. Yep, really good ones. I think, the other thing I will say, Adriana, is I've noticed that it's changed over the years, right? When I first got into HR, a lot of it had to do with like reliability and dependability, and communication is in there, organizational skills would be in there, right? And then as I've grown in my career, I started to go into different specialty positions, which meant that I needed to be much more detail oriented. So I think that's another factor to consider as well. I think just being in HR globally, like, under the umbrella, there are some general traits that are going to factor in, but depending on where you're at career wise in terms of the ladder growth, and then also whether you're specializing or you're generalizing is going to make a difference as well. So I think we could always, talk offline, and I could probably talk, all day long, but I think those ones that were shared with you are really a great place to start.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Very good. So talking. Yeah, Courtney, so true. So, so true. All right, let me take a look at the gallery right here and see. Trying to see anyone. I had one of the other gals who had volunteered, but she's hopped off. So if you are interested, if you have a question, it can be any type of question, whether it includes job related, anything you're caught in your head. Do you struggle with, performance anxiety, imposter syndrome, confidence? Do you feel as though sometimes you don't know kind of your place and struggle with being assertive? So I'd love if anyone would be interested, if you want to come off mute, or you can put your hand up and we can do a little coaching with you. Or worst case scenario or best case scenario, I'll do some self-coaching and you guys can just listen. So self-coaching, if you've never heard that term before, it's basically the idea that there is nobody who would be a better coach for you than you. And I think that when I really learned this tool, I love having my own coach, and I go to a coach fairly regularly, but I also recognize that I'm the only one in my head, right? We're the only ones in our head. And at the end of the day, we're the only ones who are really going to be able to know what it is you need. And, a coach can be there to help kind of plug different ideas. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Maybe this, to be able to get that ball going. But the wisdom and everything that we need, I'm a true believer, is within us. And sometimes we just need to kind of shake it out. So what I want to do, if anybody is, wanting to do any live coaching, come off mute. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of share a little bit of my story. So I said at the beginning of the call, I got into coaching during the COVID period, and, really wanted to be able to start to go into coaching and become somebody who could help people. And I think that when I did that, I was working full time in an HR career, loving the job that I had, but also recognizing that I felt like I'd been in HR for, like I said, 21 years, old enough to drink booze. And I felt like it kind of run its course and was ready to kind of make that leap to be able to do something more. And so I ended up leaving HR for a period of time and started going into to practice to be a coach. And what I found, it is so incredible, and I think so many of you can resonate and recognize this within yourselves, is that when I went from, a very comfortable position that I was in. I'd been in HR for so many years, knew what I was doing, right? But when I decided to make that leap, at first in my mind, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got this. I absolutely could go in and do this. That's what I love to do when I work with employees, is helping them see their own strength and be able to help them grow and evolve. But at the end of the day, there were so many other variables I didn't consider. So I'm sure each of you can remember a time when you started your first job, started your first professional job outside of your degree, maybe first time you were promoted into leadership positions, right? It creates such a level of what's called cognitive dissonance, right? It's your brain's completely freaking out, right? We can all relate to that, but I think professionally it happens the most when we are entering a shift, right? We're entering into that job market, we're promoted into leadership, we're now going into a position where we're, overseeing large numbers of people, and very quickly a confident brain can go to a very unconfident and unstable brain. And so what ends up happening for so many of us in that position is we start to doubt ourselves. We start to question ourselves. We start to compare ourselves. And many times that ends up causing us to retreat within ourselves, right? Think about how great it felt when we got the degree, or when we, were promoted, or when you got offered that job, and then you get there, right? And you start to realize how much you don't know, or all of the people who seem to have it all together, and yet you're sitting off on your side. I could go on and on all the different stories that start to come up for us when we start to feel that cognitive dissonance, when we start to have this freak out moment of, deep down, we know that we have value, right? We know that we are good at what we do when we put in that effort. We know that we can make a difference, right? Like, that to me is something that I know very deeply about myself, and I know about each of you. And I don't even need to talk with you or know you personally, but I know that because I know as humans, deep down, there is a knowing that sometimes we question for very unreasonable reasons. Right. And that's really what this is about. The whole idea of why we question ourselves. Why do we doubt ourselves? Why do we get to this position where we finally feel like we might be getting to where we want to go? But the minute something kind of goes off kilter, everything comes into question, right? Who we are, what we're about, why we're here, where we're going, all of that. And so that's what happened to me when I left HR, even though, again, I'd been informally coaching people for years and years and years, but now I had to go out and sell it. I had to do all these other things, right? Marketing and finance and all of that. So the next thing I knew, just like so many of us who find ourselves in a role where we feel like we're underwater or over our heads, is I started to completely freak out, started to doubt myself, started to question myself, right? And I know so many of you can relate to that doubting ourselves and questioning ourselves, because we get into that place of not feeling as though we're good enough for where we're at. And so I want to really kind of share with you what the process was for me. I know that circumstance is a little bit different than most of you who are, in HR and staying in HR, but the concept behind it is the same, right? The concept behind it is, when we're trying to shift, we're trying to grow, we're trying to evolve, the natural consequence of it, even though we may not initially see it coming, is going to be our brains trying to completely talk us out of it and tell us why we're wrong. And that comes down to very, very natural and normal wiring. And so when I really started to learn this about myself, when I started to recognize, oh, it's actually completely okay that I'm freaking out right now. Like I'm shifting my life. I'm doing something different. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to evolve. It's not going to be daisies and rainbows and butterflies every day. It's actually going to come with some pretty intense emotions, because those emotions are your body and your mind's way of adjusting to you pushing through your comfort zone. And so when we start to realize that and recognize that pushing through our comfort zone is very natural and normal, we can start to learn the skills of normalizing the discomfort that comes from growth and comes from moving forward. And it was a really tough lesson for me to learn. And I think it's a lesson that so many of us are many times just on the cusp of learning, right? Like there's so many times where we know that if we were to just take that step, if we were to just make that move, things could be so different. And yet we don't do it, right? Like over and over, we choose not to move forward. We choose to make that decision to stay safe or stay comfortable in a place that keeps us from having to go out into that combat zone. And so the more that I really paid attention to the voices inside my head, the more I started to learn how to get them out so I could realize how ridiculous they were, how silly those types of stories that I had in my head were, but really how normal and how understandable they were as well. So I feel this opportunity to really be able to pass along some massive learnings that I've learned along my journey, because even throughout my many years in HR, never did I have this lesson learned in the way that I did once I stepped away and kind of fell on my face as an entrepreneur in a very real way, but also in a way that helped me realize that all the other doubts and worries and concerns and anxieties and everything that I dealt with over my many years in HR mostly was kind of bullshit. Like, excuse my language, but was kind of bullshit. It was like the mind drama that just would get away from me over and over again. I would let, fears of judgments from others just monopolize my thinking in the workplace, to the point where sometimes I would not speak up during meetings. I wouldn't take a step forward and put myself out there because I was continuously worried about what other people would think and what they would say. So that, I think, was a very huge lesson in humility for me as I went out into the entrepreneur world, because it's all about rejection. It's all about judgment. It's all about that. And why is that such a big deal? Like I will truly get on the rooftops to say that, right? Like, why is this such a big deal? But we don't really recognize that. I think when we're in our heads, when we're in the moment, when the drama is just kind of going on autopilot, which is really what is happening, we don't recognize that is at play until we can slow down enough to pay attention to it. And that's really what coaching's all about. It's what self-coaching is all about, because that you can't do on your own. You don't have to pay anybody to coach you if you were to be skilled enough to do that kind of work each day, to say, okay, what kind of drama do I got going on in my mind today? And can I be honest with myself to question its legitimacy? Because questioning the legitimacy of your drama could actually be everything when it comes to what's holding you back. So with that, I want to pause for a moment. I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to make sure I give the opportunity, if anyone else on the call today would like to step forward and do a little coaching, go ahead, feel free to take yourself off mute. If not, I'm going to take just a quick second while we have a moment to look at some of the comments, because sometimes I get so caught up in like what I'm saying, and I end up not reading the comments, which I really need to do. Yay. Okay. All right. Oh, I love this. I've got a message just about as a person who is really trying to get into HR, what do you suggest? And I think that's a great question. I think for people who've never been in HR, getting into the field of HR can feel as though it's like this barrier of entry, right? And I really believe that when it comes to getting into any field, it starts with recognizing your strengths and looking into opportunities to be able to utilize those strengths to be able to get you into that first door, right? So if you're really good at data analytics, find some type of analytic position, some type of data position, HRIS, something like that, that could be entry level. If you're really good with people, you're a great people person, you're great at spotting, people who are strong and maybe people who not strong like this. But being able to sense strengths and weaknesses of other individuals, and recruiting could be a great opportunity to get in the door. So a lot of times people think that they need to start in HR as like an assistant or something that does a little bit of everything. I actually believe that I would start with the person and really find out, again, where it is that they might be able to add the greatest value. And it could be a generalist type role. It could be a little bit of everything. But for a lot of people, it may actually be something more specific. It might end up falling in the lines of benefits because they're very detail oriented. Like if you're detail oriented, benefits could definitely be the way to go, right? Because you got to understand the plans, you got to understand the behind the scenes of what benefits looks like. So that's where I would say for anybody, really anyone on this call who's looking to get into HR or even grow in HR, right, is understanding for yourself what it is that really you are good at, but also you enjoy, right? I think enjoying something is always going to be a part of it. But I think knowing your strengths is even a bigger part of it. And when you start to know and be able to follow the strengths that you have, you'll start to see the doors open up for you. So if I can help in any way on that, let me know, because I'm happy to spitball some ideas and, help to kind of get the ideas flowing a little bit in that way. It can be an overwhelming thing. And my goal is with this community, with the Facebook group, is to really create an opportunity for people to feel comfortable talking about the uncomfortable. That's a huge one for me too. I get passionate about things, you guys, but the more that we can start getting comfortable talking about the things that are kind of uncomfortable as HR people, the more we're going to be able to serve our people, the more we're going to be able to serve our organizations, to be able to say, you know what, this sucks right now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. And I feel like it's okay to have a safe space to be able to own that and be able to recognize that's a great place to start. If we can own our suffering, there's only opportunities to share ideas from there, only opportunities to be able to say, hey, what can we do with that? And is this universal? Is there a bigger issue that we can be talking about? And my hope is through this forum is to be able to have some of those bigger conversations and open up the dialogue where it's not just, me and someone else, that we can have real conversations about what's going on out there and what do we feel like is needed in order to be able to see our organizations and our field really of HR be able to thrive. And so I think that, with that, I am so grateful that each of you are, recognizing the importance of putting your own mental health. It's just like uh, the airline, right? The flight, and putting your oxygen mask on first. I wish I would have thought of that with Adriana. Adriana, you're still here. Yay. Okay, so something that I would say too that's really, really important that I didn't learn until years later is self-care. And the more that I started to learn the importance of taking care of myself, the better and better and better I was at serving others. And it's like this huge counterintuitive thing, right? Especially for those of us women who are parents, right? It's very difficult to think that we could ever take care of ourselves before we have to do all of the other 50,000 things that we have to do today. But when I started to prioritize it and say, no, this is non-negotiable. I have to take this time for myself. I have to do a daily meditation. I need to take that time for exercise. So much of my mind began to shift because I started to recognize how much peace it started to give within myself, which in turn kept me from getting as triggered. It kept the triggering of different things that would come up for me just didn't seem to happen quite as much. Go figure, right? So that is where the catch-22 comes in. Like, we think that self-care, taking care of ourselves, doing all of these things is going to be just this extra thing that we have to add on our to-do list, without really recognizing that when we are prioritizing ourselves, the benefits that you're going to see, not even just inside yourself, because I could go a whole hour on everything that you see of the benefits of taking care of yourself for inside, the benefits you're going to see outside of yourself, the relationships that you have that are going to be enhanced, the focus that you're going to gain by being not so overwhelmed and not so in your head is massive. So this is a process that, yeah, it does take time. It's not anything overnight where you're just going to be awakened and everything is going to come easy. It's never going to happen quite that way. But I think when you start dedicating a little bit of time each day, or as often as you can, to taking care of yourself, to doing the things that you need in order to feel fulfilled, filling that cup, you will begin to recognize the massive benefits of that reasonably quickly, which is a good thing. It's not going to take that long for you to say, oh my gosh, I get it now. But for whatever reason, again, your brain is trying to trick you that taking care of yourself should be down on the list. When I get this done, then I'll take care of myself, right? When I finish this project, then I'll take a day off, right? That is where we get it wrong. And unfortunately, it's going to take some time to rewire that. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to make sure that we're all here for each other, to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to that. It's like, oh, no, girl, we got to take care of ourselves. And when we do that, everything will begin to fall into place. Okay, let me see. Was there any other in the chats? Oh, thank you, Courtney. That's so sweet. I appreciate that. Okay, well, we are at Western time, 5:15. We have 15 more minutes. If anyone would like to do any more coaching, I'd love to chat with you. And if not, then we can go ahead and wrap up, because I think I've heard myself talk just about enough for today. I need to have like some Jeopardy music or something. Well, I want to thank you all so much for being here. This is my very first time. So the fact that at the end of the call, I've got 8 people on here, I'm so excited. Yes, I'm planning on doing this weekly. If I end up going out of town or something like that, I'll make sure that I let everybody know. But my goal is to do it at this time on Fridays. I love the idea of doing a weekend wrap up with something that fills our cup. And that's my hope to be able to offer. But if it turns out that this day and time doesn't work and I've got a huge group of people who would prefer on a different date of time, then I'm going to do that. I'll figure out the best way to connect with as many people as I can. And then also the recording is a way to check it out a little bit later and get the most out of it. So, well, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. And I hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Oh, you're so welcome, Margaret. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Adriana. Thank you, Courtney. Thanks, Chris. Oh, thank you so much. I was so nervous. So I'm so happy to hear that it sounds like it resonated with a few of you. If anyone would like to stay on, if at any time, I'm always going to stay on at the end. So if anyone wanted to come live to just chit chat with me one-on-one, anything like that, you're always welcome to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. We'll see you next Friday. Thank you. Good night. All right. Good night, Chris. Have a great weekend.